Welcome to the Fire from Two Windows podcast, where we take a deep dive into different aspects of the fire service. My name is Matt Humnicki, and I am joined with my co-host, Lou Caminelli. We want to express that these are our own opinions built by experiences and education while honing our craft. These are not the opinions nor directions from our various employers. We are here on our own to spur conversation and help level the playing field for all. Good morning, Lou.
Morning, Matt. How are you?
I'm well. What's going on?
Yeah, nothing. Worked last night. Decent meal, some training. Now here we are.
Yeah. Worked with you guys yesterday morning for part of the shift. We did our SCBA Consumption drill is what we call it. It's called the TOAC. It's called all sorts of things. It's a lot of fun, and it's kind of funny that how that developed. I'm not sure where the requirement stands on who has to do that and how often. But the concept of doing a breathe down drill is pretty cool because it's designed that you understand your working time on air. You got a 4,500 pound bottle or cylinder. You know how far you can stretch in, how much work you can do, and how much you can have left over to get you out of that building or that issue. And when you have other departments who don't do this regularly, or they do it only for the first time or one time in a firefighter one class, interior operations, whatever your level at your state is called, or even just the fire academy itself, we get into this thing where this competition mode where you want to have the most amount of air in your bottle, or you want to last the longest on your bottle. So people tend to walk a little bit when they should be running, not pushing themselves when they really should be, just to try and extend that time. And it's kind of, and that's the funny bit, is that people compete over who makes their bottle last the longest.
Yeah, I mean, when I always just try to work as hard as I can during it. And you mentioned that you might do it once in the academy. I believe New York State requires it as part of their firefighter one skill. And it's a pass-fail, and you can look it up. You can YouTube it, the TOAC for New York State, IFO, BFO, whatever they call it nowadays. The one thing I'll say, they call it pass-fail on the volunteer side, but I don't think I've ever seen anybody really fail it per se, which is a shame if people aren't really taking it seriously, because you're wearing a full set of turnout gear with your air bottle, breathing down, and if you can't meet the minimum standard of, and I think it's a pretty simple minimum standard for what New York State lays out, I believe it's one lap, and you have to be on air for, you would know, you've done a firefighter one class more recent than I have, but it's one lap, which is only 8 exercises, and how many minutes on air?
I actually don't know the specific number. It has changed, and what it is it's supposed to mimic the CPAT, the Candidate Physical Agility Test, where you have a bunch of stations that require different strengths and working environments. So there's the ladder raise. There's maybe it's a dummy drag. Typically in a CPAT, you have the push pull machine, which with a pike puller and New York hook, and you're banging ceilings. It's supposed to mimic that. It's all these little functions that mimic something on the fire ground, and you just keep moving around station to station to station to station. There's some farmer's carry type operation or station, which mimics, even in the CPAT, you actually use saws, but it's to mimic a high side compartment, pull the saws out, set them on the ground, move them a certain distance, bring them back, stick them back up in the compartment space. It does become a lot of work. Typically, it's at least one lap, but I don't know what the absolute minimum is.
The last time I taught a firefighter one, it was you had to complete one lap and be on air for a specific amount of time. So if you completed a lap and you were not on, if you flew through the course and you were only on air for 5 minutes, you had to keep doing the course until you hit the minimum. And unlike where I think the TOAC is better than the CPAT, is that they wanted you to work until your bottle went to low air. And then on the TOAC, you just walk until you breathe your bottle all the way down. Whereas CPAT, that you're not on air, you're just in a weighted vest. So there's pros and cons to both. I think there's more controls in the CPAT with the proctor, and everybody's wearing 75 pounds. Air bottle, air pack manufacturers are, the weight is different. The weight distribution on someone's body is different from air pack to air pack manufacturer. So the controls are set in the CPAT to make it as fair as possible between whoever's doing that exercise. Whereas a TOAC, gear fits differently, boots weigh differently, air packs weigh differently, and there's more variables in the TOAC than I think in the CPAT. But in my personal opinion, I think the TOAC is a better litmus test to know where you are physically on the fire ground without actually performing going to an actual job. I mean, doing the first obstacle or exercise that you do in the TOAC is 60 steps, and what's that? Three flights?
About, yeah.
3 flights of stairs with do they use a 2.5 bundle? I think it's a 2.5 bundle.
Yeah, 50-foot, 2.5 bundle.
50-foot, 2.5 bundle on your shoulder, up and down. So, and you get, for someone that's not physically prepared and not training to breathe the air out of our air packs, that's a pretty daunting task right off the gate to do that. Just my personal opinion. I think, and our breathe down drill that we do in our department is kind of a hybrid of the TOAC, because we don't have the equipment that the TOAC or the CPAT require, like the push pull. Hopefully we're going to be getting those in a grant soon.
Yeah.
But we do what we can with the equipment we have, and I was pretty pleased with my time yesterday. And I think our company, I said, let's work through our low air alarm to make it a little bit more realistic and get your more realistic bottle time, instead of just, our low air alarm went off, let's walk now. Well, my thought is, if God forbid you're in a position where your low air alarm goes off and you need to work to get out, then you're going to be expelling a lot more air and a lot more energy. So let's get a good reading on what your actual working time is.
I've actually had to tell. So we usually let the students, when you do the firefighter 1 or the interior operations course, when you let them do the TOAC at the end, everybody starts to challenge them. They get in that competition mode. Oh, I made mine last 40 minutes. Oh, I made mine last 35, whatever it is. Let them feel that for a second, and then explain to them that, hey, when you go to your respective departments and you guys do this on the annual or biannual basis, whatever your home department's requirement is, the goal is not to compete with your peers and have the longest time per se. It's to understand your working time. So when you're in the thick of it, what 12 minutes under load feels like, and that's about your max, and then you can come out. And it's also, that should be the key indicator that you should be telling your peers, especially the consistent crew that you're working with, so that they understand after 12 minutes, we might have to start thinking about a plan to come back out. It's not a weak link operation. It's just who is going to consume the most amount of air and what your time is relative to the work. Where that boils down to is, if you're doing 45 minutes, what that's telling me is you're really not doing any work. You're defeating the skill, the challenge, and you've checked the box of meeting that requirement, but you're really not working. And how do you put that on every single individual who is completely different from the next person? Somebody that's built like a beast, or somebody who's thinner and runs endurance marathons, things of that nature, they might make a bottle last longer with a lot of workload. That's a good thing to note. the competitive nature should be maybe you recognize one of your buddies is always low, but without doing a lot of air. Okay, we do workouts together, or we start coming up with a plan outside of work or outside drill night where we're working on our endurance, getting our VO2 up or something.
Yeah, it shouldn't really be like you mentioned, like a weakest link thing, but especially for the company officer, it's something to keep in the mind as who your crew is and what their working times are on their bottles. But I also like to look at it as, personally, where am I today? Where was I last year? And where do I want to be next year? I'm not in the fire service game, I'm not a spring chicken anymore. So my goal is to maintain my working time that I have on my bottle at this point, which I think it was a pretty good working time yesterday. So if I can maintain that up until it's time for me to hang up the boots and my helmet, I think I've done a pretty good job. But hopefully some of the younger guys that were doing it yesterday, so one of them mentioned, he goes, I go, how'd you do? He goes, I did good. He goes, I'm just trying to maintain, get to your level. I'm going to say, no, just you get to your level and do as much as you can do. But overall, it's some guys, it's a pain in the butt to do. But if you look at it with an open mind and see why we actually do it, it's very beneficial for everybody. It's a good workout. It's a good, like I said, it's a good gauge to see where you are, see where you've been at. If you keep the times recorded. One thing I like, my watch keeps track of skin temperature, and just to watch my skin temperature raise up as I was performing the task for however many minutes I was on the course was interesting. It was just below 100 degrees, my skin temperature, which is interesting. And we were outside on a cool spring, and it was sunny. What was it, like 70 something yesterday?
Yeah, before all the rain. Yeah, it was
70s,
getting up.
Low 70s, high 60s, light breeze. Not real, and it wasn't humid at all. Like some days we do this and we have to do it inside because the humidity in the sun is just overbearing. But for my skin temperature to get up almost to 100 degrees, and we're not inside a fire, it was just kind of interesting to see what was going on. I'm kind of upset. I misread the email that our health and safety officer sent out, because there's that doctor doing the study with the chest bands.
Yes.
And I didn't realize you had to sign up through the email. I was going to put one on yesterday, but I had a conversation with her, and she was saying that the study is twofold. It's one, to get data collected on firemen as they're wearing turnout gear and doing physical tasks. And two, he's trying to see the efficacy of these chest bands and what chest band is going to work the best.
Yeah, for future studies.
Right, for future studies. Because
yeah,
I offered to give her my biometrics that I got from the watch, because I thought it was pretty accurate yesterday. But the doctor needs the stuff from the chest band, because this chest band also measures respiration rates as well, which the watch doesn't.
No. The TOAC itself, or what we did yesterday, was a little bit more. It's a little bit extra than what the TOAC prescribes, and that's fine. You can always go over the minimum, but the prescription says that when you start getting into when your bell's going off, so that last third of your bottle, then you walk it out. Until you breathe it all the way down, the low air alarm goes off. It completes, and then you allow that. Typically, it's about 100 breaths, 120 breaths that you have left before that mask sucks to your face, because there's no inhalation or exhalation that can happen. And that's the moment where you want to end. However, that walking thing, it's kind of letting your heart rate come down. It makes that time go from, say, 25 minutes all the way up to 45 minutes, because you got, for somebody that's just walking around, they're not going to breathe as much air. It's good for your body to come down to a rest slowly, but it ultimately does not, I think in my personal opinion, it defeats the purpose of this working time. Yet it's when you should be coming out of the building. You should be not still in there working under that last third, but really you kind of want to understand what your total working time is so that you get a good picture. You and I think did the other two who were with us?
Yeah, our whole company worked through the low air alarm.
We worked right through it. I mean, it's a free workout. Why not? It's a good challenge. It felt good. I like to take away a few key points that one of those stations might be tough. I'm trying to think which one was the toughest.
It definitely was the 1 3/4 hose pull. Probably was.
Yeah, it kind of felt like it. Which we have a 1 3/4. It's 100 foot. It's filled with sand, and I think that one was just sand. Usually we have one that's sand and rope, but you drag that out as if you're stretching down a hallway, in a kneeling or crouched position, dragging it out 100 feet. You come back and then you hand over hand pull it back. It's good. It starts activating some of these muscles you don't typically work on in your general gym setting. And when you start feeling that little aches at the end of it, you go, okay, that's the signal. That's what I got to start working on adding into my regular routine. What did you end up, what was your time? I ended up with working straight through it, trying not to stop or take a lot of breather moments. I think it was 26 minutes and some change, 26:36.
So I looked at both. Looked at my watch because I was on cardio mode for my Garmin, and I hit low air at 11:33, and my total working time was 29:30.
Yeah. Damn. You over doubled it on the end. She had more working time in the last bit than the first bit.
Right, and that struck me kind of odd that I went through 2/3 of a bottle faster than I went through 1/3 of a bottle.
Do you think it's because of the bell going off?
I don't know. I think that, so I took an air pack off of one of our, I wouldn't say a reserve rig. It's one of rigs that doesn't get used that much. And the LED lights weren't functioning properly on it. So the LED lights weren't counting down. Like, it went from 2 LED lights right to low air. It never gave me, it didn't go to one green LED. It didn't go to a yellow LED. And then I didn't even get a half a bottle sound. So when our bottles go to, when we have half a bottle left, we get a long beep, and then a red light pops up on the LED screen, on the LED readout. And I kept looking at my remote regulator, and I'm like, I don't know why why nothing's activated on my LED heads up display yet. So I don't know if it was a readout malfunction. I also did start at only just over 4,300 pounds of air. So I had 200 pounds of air less than a full bottle.
Well, that's pretty good. I didn't check with the other two that we were working with. There was a crew that ran it before us. I know I heard something 40-something minutes, but they all did the actual prescribed thing of walking it out at the low air. So they kind of got a little bit more, and they got some runners on that crew as well. So I kind of expect their working time to be a little bit higher. We were just using it as a day to push ourselves. I got to do it with my own group as well. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that's the TOAC. How that fits in. So we have the academy going on. The county academy's running, and there's quite a bit of new hires. We have 2 from our department in it right now. This year I didn't get as involved as much as I usually do. I kind of wanted to, I have some home projects and some stuff elsewhere. So I only put in for a couple weeks and said I could help out. We just finished up truck week two weeks ago. And I love truck week. Obviously, I know we both work on a truck and everything, and man, that is a fun week all the way around. I think it gets a lot of people just because you're moving a ton of ladders constantly. And as an instructor, you have to find this balance. I hate that word balance, but you have to find this middle ground of making sure you're getting all the curriculum through so that they can pass the tests and you check the boxes and everything. But at the same time, you're showing them some advancement, something that's going to help them for their individual departments, because we do have people from all sorts of places. Sometimes we have some from downstate and out of state, but trying to tailor make something specific to what they're going to need to know for their department in the future, all the way on up to just getting through the day, not burning people out.
Yeah.
And a big part of this was the PT that happens. So the department that's hosting it this year, they like to run the PT in the afternoon. So they had, for day one of truck, they did their work. They got smoked in PT. Day two of truck, they came right in. They were kind of a little bit more tired than they probably should have been at that point. And it wasn't to the participants being underprepared or slacked off or did something or out of shape. It wasn't that. I think we just drove them a little bit too hard. So we had to kind of tweak the schedule a little bit to make sure that they could pass the rest of the week with the amount of work we were doing in class, physical work, and not just the PT. And that was an interesting conversation I heard on like the end of day two. One of the other instructors lit up the PT group, the PT cadre over that. But I love it. I know you usually get involved with truck. Wish you could have been there this year for at least truck week. I'm sure there'll be one in the future. What do you got on that?
Real quick, with PT being ran in the afternoon, I think it's the worst idea there is. I know there's logistical issues with this academy going on with PT in the morning and PT in the afternoon. They got to find and make it work for the morning. Just on a holistic, doing PT in the morning gets the body physically ready, and it also mentally gets them ready for the day. That spike in heart rate, it's just so good for the body to have some sort of physical activity in the morning. It sets the tone for the rest of the day. And traditionally, when I ran the academy, and then when I was the lead instructor for truck, in a couple academies after that, after I led, PT was in the morning. And if you know it's going to be a hard day, you don't have to beat them up in PT. You can prepare them for the day with some light movements, some light stretches, some warming up, and then that gets the muscles warmed up for the test that they're going to be performing that day. Where if you're going to beat these kids up, and I say kids because that's, some are not kids, but if you beat these kids up during the day, during truck week, crawling around doing searches, throwing ladders, going up on the roof cutting and doing ventilation, and then you're going to do PT, it's how do you tailor the PT after they've just done 8 hours of grueling physical work, which truck work is. You can't give them a pass because you still have to do PT. And then you hammer them in, or if you hammer them in PT because of, whatever reason, then they go home, they're exhausted, and they wake up the next morning, they're just not physically or mentally ready for the day. I completely disagree, and I will always disagree. And I think their logistical reason is just an excuse. If they wanted to make it happen in the morning, they could make it happen in the morning. The other thing is, and I know there's some, I'm trying to find the right word for this, some disagreement about using PT as a corrective action measure. It happens. If there isn't, we used it in our academy that we ran. if there was mistakes made the previous day, we would go to our PT instructors and say, hey, this is what was going on, address it. Now, it's not a form of capital punishment, but the PT instructors would address it during the PT workout, and maybe they held position of reflection for a little bit while they were getting spoken to about their mistakes that previous day.
A position of reflection.
In position of reflection, it might be a plank. It might be holding a push-up position. If anybody knows, was it the dead cockroach position?
Okay.
You're on your back with your legs straight up in the air and your hands straight and your arms straight up in the air. It's nothing. You're not doing anything to physically hurt them. They're in a PT position, a plank, a push-up position, and they're holding it while you speak to them. Does the message get through? Some people it does. Some people, they're just so concentrating on holding that position. But it's a form of saying, hey, you guys messed up. This is what's going to happen when you mess up. Let's move forward with it. Don't mess up again.
All training as a whole, it's usually when you're trying to install some new behavior or new knowledge, right? And some people, you need to force fit something on them. You need to force fit an impression on them because they have yet to learn that skill or they have yet to understand why. And we've talked about different generations, age generations and everything. And we're getting more into this. People want to know the why in order to get the buy-in. And our task, our duty as firefighters really is not to ask a lot of that. Some of it it's impossible to explain the ending so that now you can get there. You just have to, force fit it. And I realize it's probably one of the only industries where you can do that, or you have to do that. You can't just put someone in a burning building, torch the bitch, and then the light bulbs go off in their head. Oh, this is why it's important to have core workout, or this is why we have to do the push-pull machine, because we have to pull a bunch of ceilings. You have to do the cart before the horse thing. We have to smoke your shoulders over and over again so that you are prepared for when you have to do that, if you have to do that, right? That's one little tiny instance. But the entire academy is trying to install stuff and work with this behavior change where we need them to understand why, but we can't take the time for every individual and show them the why for everything.
Right.
Just to get them to get buy-in and get that thing, that whatever it is we're trying to impress on them, to stick. Go ahead.
I was saying the other issue I have with PT, and I've seen this at a couple academies, is that they're so worried about tailoring the PT to passing the CPAT.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you are physically fit and you do a little bit of physical activity on the weekends to prepare yourself for the CPAT, which is get on the stair mill for 20 minutes. I mean, if you do the stair mill for an hour, which I do, I know guys at our firehouse, they'll get on the stair mill for an hour, put on a podcast, and that hour goes quick. Now, I'm not wearing a vest every time, but just to get your legs in the muscle memory of going on that stair mill and working those legs, that the dividends that pays off when it comes time to actually perform the CPAT for your pass-fail, it's going to pay off immensely. And if you're just physically fit and you do the exercise, if you do just general calisthenics that we used to do when I ran the academy and a couple academies after that, Monroe County's never had a fail in the CPAT, but it seems like we've changed our PT to more worry about passing the CPAT than actually doing functional fitness. And I'm not a big fan of the whole quote unquote functional fitness, because if you look at the CrossFit gyms and you look at CrossFit games and they're quote unquote functional fitnesses, but then you give somebody an actual these functional athletes a sledgehammer and tell them to spike in
Yeah.
a post, you look at them, they don't know how to swing a sledgehammer. So what functional fitness is it really? I'm not saying they're not fit. They're way more fit than I'll ever be. But just making these recruits physically fit and showing them workouts that they can do without specialized equipment that we've been using in the academy, I think is going to be more beneficial for their career. Not every firehouse has sleds. Not every firehouse has TRX bands. Not every firehouse has an air assault bike. But we're using these in our PT sessions, and they're not going to have those when they go back to their firehouse. So let's just show them how to do a basic push-up. How can you get some sort of back exercise with limited equipment? Most firehouses should have some sort of exercise bands. I hope they at least have a pull-up bar. Basic equipment, basic calisthenics. I mean, when you and I went to the state academy, how many guys were in your class?
48.
48 in your class. And I went when there was only, we started with 23. We ended up with 21 by the end. We didn't use any equipment. There was zero equipment in our PT session, and nobody failed the CPAT. Did anybody fail the CPAT in yours?
No.
So, I mean, it's fun to use the equipment, but I think we're getting away from what we should be focusing on is giving, and I know we're talking about Truck Week, but we're talking about the academy as well. We're focusing on a specific 10 minutes and 20 seconds of their career, which is the time that you're on the CPAT course for.
Yeah.
We should be focusing on a 20-year span of their career and showing them how to do basic workouts with limited equipment, because some firehouses just don't have the capital to invest in their gyms.
Yeah.
Just my thought.
So I agree. I think it's they're focused on trying to beat that CPAT, but really you need to start to focus on beating the event that they hopefully never have to do. When I went through the academy, I didn't understand it at first why we were doing so much PT in the morning, and then throughout the day we had what was called TOPT, task-oriented physical fitness or physical testing, whatever the heck it was, physical training. That's what it was. If you weren't in an evolution, your group was off to the side doing push-ups, sit-ups, or you threw that hose bundle over your shoulder and just up and down steps until it was your turn to do the evolution. You set it down, then you went and did the evolution. It seemed grueling at the time. Now I was looking at it as like, hey, this is going to be awesome. I need to get in physical shape, but I was also getting tired. I didn't understand why. Now fast forward here, we're staring down. We have two buildings across the street from in our first due, we have Kodak or the old industrial buildings. And then we have a brand new Amazon building that's 5 stories. And every time you get that popcorn fire in the microwave on the 5th floor, you're hiking that whole way with all of your gear. So you got your hotel bundle, your high-rise kit, your own personal, your PPE with your SCBA, your tools of choice. You're probably you're bringing all of this weight. And when you start adding up, and then you're going up 5 industrial flights of stairs, your legs are getting smoked, right? So that's the end. That's what you're really playing. You're trying to challenge yourself for and get to. That's the skill I need to be able to get all the way up there, then go to work. And that's some of the toughest stuff. And that really humbles you some days when you've been slacking off on leg day or not carrying enough weight in the gym or whatever it is you've been doing. You've only been focused on curls. And then you get to that instance and you get all the way up there and you're panting. It's like, thank God you didn't have to go on SCBA just to get up there, because you'd be out. You wouldn't be able to work. By the time you got up there, you have to come back down for a bottle exchange. The academy should be trying to connect with an instance of something like that, where we need to prepare your body for something future that you don't have. And you need to, as the individual, you have to self-analyze and recognize that you have to continue on with that work. So rotate through. My thing was always, at least once I got on the line, there was a 250-pound guy, there was a 300-pound guy. What if my partner goes down? I'm a smaller frame. I have to prepare for that guy to go down to be able to drag him out. And dragging's no joke. It's not like curling. It's not like bench pressing. You're in a weird position your body's not naturally supposed to be in order to move that weight out of a building while draining a bottle that you don't have, you only have limited air. So for me, it was start to plan for whatever extreme event and hope it never happens. But that's my cap out. That's my threshold I'm trying to push to and keep moving it higher and higher and higher. We should be looking to that. So if you got, let's say there is a hefty person in the academy, yeah, it sucks in today's day and age, but you got to point that person out and say, hey, see this person here? That's the one we all need to prepare for. By the end of our academy, we all need to be able to drag this person. Every one of you. So if you're the smallest person, the shortest, the tallest, the fattest, the skinniest, it doesn't matter. Everybody's got to be able to do the maximum in your class because that's going to be the worst case scenario. You're already going to work. One of your partners drops. You have to get them out. Can you do it? That's the ultimate test, not a CPAT, not being able to just throw ladders, not being able to just stretch hose line. That's it. So while you're doing all the ladders and all the hose line and everything, if you can't move that person, do you belong here? And now there's going to be RIC teams and everything else. Hopefully, if as your environment changes, you got more teams showing up or more crews. Yeah, they're going to help you out as well. But that should be the end goal. That should be your physicality goal, is to be able to move that big person out of the building, or at least get it started. And if you can't do it, that should be your indicator. Be honest with yourself. Do you deserve to be here? Or can you make yourself better to deserve to be here? Now, I'm not saying I can just get up today right now and pull 350 pounds. I mean, I know I can because I just did it, but there's weeks where if I skip a few leg day or pull days or something, I'm pushing down to 300, maybe a little under. So I got to get back on the horse and build up to that again. Got to be real with yourself. Truck week is no different because you are constantly moving weight. You might not be moving 350 pounds. And when you get to the VEIS stations, you are moving a hefty dummy. It's usually 185 pound dummy through a floor, out a second story window and down. And then you got to go back in there and do it again, or do another station, or there's a second victim, over and over and over again. So that PT portion of the academy should have been building you up for that truck week, and then right after that for that engine week, because now you're stretching charged 3-inch hose lines, quite a distance. You might be charging and pulling IDLH 4-inch, 5-inch, and that's no joke. But if you're not preparing them for those weeks, what are we doing?
Right.
We're just checking boxes to get through.
So how did the truck week start off with? I think the best practice that we put in place is that we kind of front load the cognitive and the PowerPoints all in the beginning and kind of breeze through them and use the textbook. Hey, make sure the textbook's read because you're going to be tested on this. Because the most important, which everybody says, is the hands-on stuff, even though you have to know what's in the book to pass a test. And you should know the book, say what it is about, it's a whole different conversation about what text we use. But so you start with PowerPoint, correct?
Yep. They started with PowerPoint the first day, and then some super basic ladders and force entry, and then rolled in a little bit heavier, and it kept building up throughout the week. So by the end of the week, it was live fire.
Yeah, and they do get some basic ladder throwing and some searching in their firefighter training series, which would be the equivalent to a firefighter 1 style weeks, which is in your first couple weeks, and some force entry. And it's always been... I always would handpick my instructors for truck week, especially for technical skills like forcible entry, because I'm not a big quote unquote tips and tricks guy. If you have the basics down, tri-shack gap set force control and then clear, or clear then control, you can force any door. You don't need to turn the Halligan this way and pop it this way and whatever. If you gap it, you set your forks after the gap, you force a door, and if you got to clear it with the adds again, 99% of the doors you come across, you're going to be forcing.
Right.
Talking with you, it seems like you had to almost relearn, reteach some skills based on what was happening. Yeah.
So I was put on the forcible entry prop for the first 2 days, which I don't mind doing. I kind of like it. And I was just doing the same thing. We talked about it at that, the grit training that was out by my way. So day one, we had inward and outward swinging doors, and they just wanted them to get through the reps, just break as many doors as possible, which is fine. But the first round that went through, and I kind of figured this was going to happen at this point in the truck week. I got to add this. In this point in the truck week, they've already experienced forcible entry, conventional forcible entry back in Firefighter 1 and Firefighter 2. So they understand that you can force it with a marriage, a set of irons. Somebody at that time frame had that, it's just a brief, quick introduction. You do 1 or 2 doors. Okay, moving on. Somebody had shown them a cool trick, and now we fast forward to truck week, and they're going straight for the cool trick stuff. And it does not, that falls into what I call the 5% category. Conventional forcible entry should be able to, as long as you go through your normal gap set force for your both inward and outward, you should be able to clear 95% of the doors with just those 2 tools. If you got to add a cheater bar, it's a little bit more advanced. That's fine. You're throwing either a double Halligan together. You're marrying up a Halligan, 2 Halligans, or you're throwing a 6-foot bar on there, like a New York hook. That's fine, just because of size and whatever. But if you're skipping your regular gap set force every time, again, going back to that first impression, you're going to always drive to that same thing, especially when you're under stress and under load mentally, right? We do the firefighter training series in the open. There's no smoke. There's no limited visibility. There's no heat. You're not getting screamed at. It's one station. There's nothing else happening around you. And as you build up, you need to start introducing the environment changes around you, such as the heat. That's when you start seeing the wheels fall off this, because they don't have yet the hard installation of that gap set force. Adds to gap, adds to start prying, or switch to the forks the appropriate direction. And in order to combat that, you have to tailor that environment specifically to force them to learn what we call the basics, or the 95% category. So it wasn't so much relearning, it was bolstering those things and making it impossible to use any of the other tricks. For station 1, as soon as they showed up, hey, we're just going to break this. We're going to go through the gap set force, inward and outward, no big deal. And they all kind of had that. They almost wanted to roll their eyes, like, we already did all this. I don't want to do this again. Show us the next thing. It's like, you got to trust me, because we're going to set this up by the afternoon. It's going to get harder. By the end of the week, you guys are going to lose your shit if you don't have this down. And you got to trust me. I got a plan. So the big thing that came down is we go back to our training scars episode. We talk about all of our forced entry doors. Those forced entry doors are designed so that people can do multiple repetitions on one door. All right. Almost all of them have springs in the hinges or behind the hinge set, so that, let's say it's an outward swinging door, it's swinging at you. We all know what that looks like. As soon as I stick the adds in to go in gap, right, I'm rotating left and right. So I'm using the 2-inch of the adds. That door is going to compress left and right. And that's not realistic. That can't happen. A wooden door at a residential, yeah, maybe it's going to squish a little bit because it's wood or it's hollow core or something. But if it's a steel door, you're not going to move that door left and right. It's not a sliding glass door. So if you don't understand those principles, you wouldn't go, you're going to naturally go to that thing because you've done this repetition over and over again on the blue door, the red door, the whatever door. The best doors out there are either getting a ton, like 100 freaking doors that you ripped off a building or have donated, and just let them destroy one door. You go to the second door, you go to the third door and keep going. It's a one-time use only, but that's impossible with budget constraints. So we have these spring doors, or it's the ones that have the spring-loaded section that's at where the door handle would be, and that bounces in and out. It's just, it produces a shitty technique that we're trying to gap an outward swinging door. You really can't gap an outward swinging door. Not the way that we're being taught anyways. So when you sneak your ads in there, you bottom it out. Yeah.
And they use the palm hammer to set the ads in. It's like, you're not going to be able to do that on a metal door.
No, you can on this one because the springs compress.
Yeah. You can set the ads against the door and then pound it in with the axe and then get your gap that way.
Right.
But they think they can wiggle it up and down. It's like, there's no
not gonna happen.
Commercial door out there that's got a gap that these props have that you can wiggle your ads in there. You got to hold the Halligan firmly up against the door and pound that ads into that outward swinging door to get the gap.
Yeah. So for that outward swinging, you bottom the ads into the door stop, which is on these doors, there's steel door stop that won't break. Now you got to pull out, probably a little bit of pressure pulling out away from the door so that your ad starts sneaking around the door, between the door and the frame itself, instead of, just at the door stop. And that's what starts to get people. Those light bulbs are slowly starting to trickle on, flick on. But you can't do the rotational gap on an outward swinging door. For an inward swinging door, it's the same deal, right? You can, now you have the door stops, you're sneaking the ads between the door and the door stop. And then you're going to pry up or down so that you can create your gap. That's normal. We can do that. But on a real door, that door stop might blow off. It's going to start peeling away. Now what do? You might have to switch straight to the force and go straight to a force because you can't get anything in there. You didn't actually move the door. You broke away part of the,
right.
The door stop off the jam. That's it. If you don't understand those relationships, you're never going to be able to get to the point where you can use the cool tips and tricks later on. If you go straight for those, you're going to fail. So everybody tries it for the inward swinging door where it's swinging away from you. They stick the ads in behind, it's almost like cheating because it's designed that way, that you stick the ads in between the door and the door stop and you start prying in, you wiggle it left or up and down so you get your rotational gap, and then you pry with the ads. They're prying against the doorstop. That doorstop will never do that in any real door. Almost any real door. I'm sure there's one freaking door out there that, I'm going to be wrong. Somebody will write to us. Well, I had this one door. I get it. But it's bad technique, right? Gap your door first, then set your iron. So whether that's setting the ads now between the door and the frame, or it's setting the forks between the door and the frame, get that consistency down. Go through the process and you'll have a better chance, a better percentage of completion, achievement. I don't like playing the pretend game anytime we set up. It doesn't matter if it's with the county, it's with the volunteers or the paid staff, or even at the academy. If you have to tell the group that's about to participate through whatever this drill is, hey, pretend that this is here or this isn't here, fuck it. Just pack it up and go home. That really sucks. Because they can't visualize that. Now you're not putting in their memory bank. When we talked about the Rolodex for the recognized prime decision making, they're never going to see that again in a real scenario. You're telling them make believe. They're not playing make believe in a real fire, or a house or whatever that is that they got to force. So you got to, in other words, change the environment. So what I did for these doors was brick them. I stuck shit in there so that those springs could not compress. But we're slowly building up. Before I did that, it was, so day one in the morning was just regular. We're just going through the forcing portions, get that technique down. By the afternoon, we started adding tougher locks. So instead of just a piece of pine block, we started adding multiple pine blocks, making it a little bit tougher. Day two in the morning was I positioned the doors to a corner. It's kind of like a raised concrete platform. So it's at the tower that we were using. It's on the Bravo Charlie corner. Underneath the stairwell, there's that concrete pad. So I put both doors up against two corners of that, one on the Bravo corner or Bravo side, and one on the Charlie side. Now it allows those doors can't turn. And then I took a fridge and brought that over and stuck it right between the two doors so that you couldn't. Now you have something, a physical barrier to create this thing to be like a door at the end of the hallway. Okay, so now we're back to just pine blocks. Now you got pine blocks for the lock set because we're going to still focus on that technique, but now you're not going to be able to swing all the way left and right of the door with your forcing techniques because we put something, a physical barrier in their way. Instead of playing pretend, make it happen. And then by the end of the day, it was locking out those springs so you couldn't compress the door, then put it inside of a garage so we could close the door, smoke it out, add a little bit more of an extreme. And then we ended up with like our lock sets where I used 3/8 rebar and PVC primarily. And it got tough. So now you got to feel for that door, feel for the hinges, realize if it's an inward or outward, make your selection and run your technique. It made it tougher and tougher each situation. By the end of those 2 days, then you saw all the light bulbs light up. Now I get it, type of thing. That's a good feeling. But instead of telling them to pretend, they have to come to the conclusion by going through the steps so that they're better prepared. That's one station, right? In one station, 1 week of the entire academy. We should be doing this all the time for every station out there as best we can.
Yeah. Yeah. Crawl, walk, run.
Essentially.
If you add in something new, like you did with to make a reduced area where they're going to be forcing entry, reduce the lock set so they can still force a door and get the technique, and then ramp the lock set up again.
Right.
But it's the same problem we have every time. We almost have to break them down to build them back up in truck week with some of these skills because of what they've learned during the during the firefighter training series. Because everybody likes tips and tricks in the new hack, and they see one thing that they perceive that's going to make their job easier, and you hit the nail on the head. It might work 5% of the time. Well, if they're like everybody else in the fire service and they have a little bit of an ego problem because of type A plus personalities, they're going to try that technique and it's not going to happen. They're like, oh, I can get this. And they're going to try it again. Oh, let me try. I can get it. Well, how many times are you going to try to get it with that technique and it keeps failing before you realize, oh, I should have just done the basics? It's the whole slow down to speed up notion to where let's just do the basics, force the door the correct way, and you're going to get in there a lot faster than possibly continue making mistakes and failing at the tip or the hack that you learned one time at an academy. So
we had some forcible entry going on. There was some basic ladder work or beginning ladder work. They had already gone through the processes, again, for Firefighter 1, Firefighter 2 of raising and carrying ladders, single person, 2 people, 3 people with the 35s. Now it was more getting comfortable doing it either on your own or with a team, but under a little bit more stressful environment. So for the one day, we went out to the local training facility, the PSTF, and it was a windy day. It seems like everybody in the freaking county was out there all at once, as always happens. One of the stations was we had the ladder dance, which goofy name, I know, but it's kind of just maneuvering a 24-foot extension ladder around on your own. And it was a little windy, so it added an extra challenge. They had throwing 35s at back of the building. We had all of our saw stations. That's kind of why we needed to go over there. We had all of our saw stations going. There's a flat roof prop for doing 798 cuts. They have a peak there for doing peak cuts. We have a walkable pitch simulator, and then there was one that requires the use of ground ladders with a roof ladder up to the top, and you're cutting off that ladder. It was a great day, and by having all 4 of those saw stations running congruently, you gave everybody a chance to really develop their saw skills. We've talked in the past that people aren't really coming in with a lot of small motors experience or small engine experience. This gave them all, from the person that's got no experience to some experience, all the way up to the same speed. And I thought that was kind of cool. Some headaches along the way. Some people really not feeling as comfortable, but definitely worked better in the long run by having that whole day kind of dedicated. That was fun. That was cool.
Yeah, it's tough to. I mean, you're cutting in a box on the simulators, and we've talked about this before with the training scars. And it's tough to say, well, on a real roof, you don't have to cut just a 4x4 hole. You're going to cut this hole as big as you need it to be. 4x4 is the minimum. And there's techniques that you can do, especially off a roof ladder, like spiking the Halligan as a foothold, that you can't do on these simulators. And there's no real easy way to teach them without spiking it into the pallets that we put up there. And they're not pallets, they're 4x4 frames with OSB sheathing on them. And as an instructor, I'm always hesitant to show them that on the roof simulator, because if you spike that Halligan in the bottom corner or whatever, and they run that saw a little too far, they're going to run that saw either into their foot, or they're going to run that saw into the Halligan bar, and then you're out, an expensive chain depending on what you're using. So the best ventilation you can get is if you can get a vacant cut, which we had one academy. We had the big restaurant across the street from one of our firehouses that had plenty of roof space for anybody to cut up there. But did you guys do searching at the PSTF, or did you guys leave searching for back at the burn?
They did. No, I think that was mostly at the other facility, at the hosting agency facility. I don't think they did any. We were only out at the PSTF for one day, because then in the afternoon we had a lot of the ladder circus, the Paxton drill. They had another one going on too. I forget what the third one was, but kind of what eats up the time is doing the ladder circus, where you have them up and down all these different ladders onto a building. There's a 5-story non-burnable building, and they go up the aerial to the roof, off the roof, down the J ladder, inside, down a 35, up a 24, down a 24, or any combination thereof. And you have to go 5 rounds. I'm sorry, 6. They did six rotations. So it was 3 with a tool, 3 without a tool, or vice versa, depending on who was setting it up that day.
And we had just giving the recruits confidence in climbing ladders.
Yeah, this year they opted not to do the schoolhouse climb. So you come out a window and you go down the inside of a ladder, because they didn't want somebody one year decided to give up at some point, just let go, and just plummeted straight down. They were only like 3 feet off the ground, but we didn't want to take any risks with that this year. So they opted not to. And even with that, you had 2 people who ended up having to go for dehydration, and one person actually quit the academy altogether.
Oh,
really? One person. I was surprised to see that, because you're all the way through it. That's it. That's all you had to do for the rest of the day. And engine week will beat the snot out of you the following week, but man, you're almost there. And they didn't want to do it anymore. They couldn't talk them back into it. Talk the person back in.
You know what? I don't know if we've talked about this before, but I don't think it's not the academy's job. The academy's job is to have a standard of training that they have to complete to begin their career. Some people think it's the academy's job to weed out people that shouldn't be in the fire department. That's not the academy. If you host your own academy, like if you're a big city and you host your own academy, then yes, that you might have that as part of your. You might instruct your academy cadre to make sure you're getting the cream of the crop that graduates the academy and is going to be able to do the job for the future of your department. But that's a sole provider academy. Academy that we run, or even the state academy, where you're having a conglomerate of departments bringing their recruits into your academy, it's not the academy's job to weed them out. The academy's job is to provide them with the best possible instruction that there is. What I will say, it's not the academy's job to try to convince somebody to stay if they want to quit. If they want to quit, see you later. What the academy should be doing, though, is documenting and providing feedback to both the recruit and the training officer and the fire chief of what their progress is or lack of progress is, so the department can make the decision on whether to get rid of said recruit. Like I said, if the recruit wants to quit, I don't think there should be any convincing to try to bring them back, because they've already made it up in their mind. But departments like our size and the departments that are sending people to our academy have already made an investment in the way civil service works in this state. There's a firefighter test once every other year. Commission's got to vote to approve long story short, the process is long to get one fireman on the job. It's a long process. And if the academy's out there trying to get people to quit, and I'm not saying that this academy was trying to get this person to quit. It doesn't sound like they were, but some people think that the academy should try to get people to quit. If the academy's trying to get people to quit, you are setting that department behind. It could be 6 months. It could be 2 years, depending on the process it takes to bring on new firemen. So the academy should be trying to get the best quality product out there and molding even a turd into something that's going to have a long-standing 20-year career and contribute to the fire service. It's a big investment to send somebody to the academy, and the return on the investment is huge. And if you get rid of, you might be doing like a service to the fire department by getting rid of somebody, but it shouldn't be their priority of trying to make somebody quit.
I agree. There is a documentation process. And it's fun to see that evolution over the last 2-3 years, where now they're documenting week by week the instructors that are working that week, or even temporary, just for the 1 week off assignments or the full academy assignments, constantly documenting the positive behaviors and the negative behaviors that are coming out as it goes along. And in each week, those get shuffled straight off to the fire chiefs or the MTOs of each individual department. Ultimately, it comes down to the department to make that decision. The academy can't just say, hey, fire, you're fired. Obviously, grades matter. You have to do so much completion, and if you don't make that grade, then there's nothing you can do as the instructor and any better.
Right.
Other than making sure you're giving them the information.
They have to meet the standard. But it's not it's the academy shouldn't be out there trying to, if they see a mutt, someone that they don't agree, if it's not the academy cadre's position to dictate whether this person's a good fireman or this person's a good fireman, they need to be as objective as possible. They can't be subjective. And if they have a target on somebody, they can't make evolutions tougher, or they can't be on that recruit more than the other ones to try to make them quit. They have to document it objectively and say, this person couldn't throw a 24-foot ladder, this person couldn't force this door, this person didn't know how to stretch an 1 3/4 hose line. Oh, and this person failed the hazmat test. This person, barely passed his firefighter 1 exam. They give all that documentation to his chief officer or training officer and or both, and then that department should be the one that makes the decision on whether that person stays on the job or not. the academy shouldn't be out trying to make people quit. If they want to quit on their own because of the natural progression of the classes, that's on the recruit. But they shouldn't. There was an instructor that worked at the state that he would, and I've heard this from multiple people when I was a training officer, from multiple recruits that when we sent down there, he would come in during their quote unquote hell week, which I think is the biggest BS statement that academy came up with, and they've gotten rid of it after some instances. And he would come in on Monday morning and say his goal is to make at least one person quit the academy after this week or during this week. And he's had like 100%. He's had at least one person quit his academy ever since he's been teaching this week. And it's like, that's not your goal, man. Your goal shouldn't be to make people quit. If they want to quit on their own, that's on them, but it's not on you to make them quit.
It's interesting. You think that's something that he just throws out there, that individual throws out there to try and it's just a mind game to get you to focus or question so that you self realize this job is for you or is not for you? Or do you think that's somebody who's just really got, what's the saying that hurt people often hurt people? You know, you think at some point somebody hurt him and he's out there to get revenge on the next poor bastard? Or is this just a mental game, a kind of like a psych out to get you to power through it so that you're a better person? Or I don't know. Because I can see both sides.
I can see your point. And if I didn't know him and I didn't witness some of the actions that were taking place during that week, I would say that would be a good point to make, and that would be a good motivational speech on a Monday morning. But the actions this person took, and just me knowing him, more of on a professional level, I haven't seen him in a while, but seeing some of the stuff he was doing during the academy during that week, it was more of, no, I want to make somebody quit. And I thought that was...
It's a bit... That's too much.
Yeah.
That's too much. The last station that I worked on for that week, we did a can confidence station. It was me and Andy worked on it, and we'll have Andy on here soon too, because he's got a lot to say. He's got some cool stuff up his sleeve. We fired up the cans. I think they just want us to go in, put a little water on the fire, and call it a day. And it's like, no. Okay, no problem. We'll get it done. And then we ran it the way we adjusted things, if you will.
Yeah.
So we were allowed one little burn room that they just kept feeding a little fire, a little hay fire in. And like, if you're going to go in and search in with a can and you're going to have can confidence, it's how to use that can appropriately. Now we're in truck week. So when you have a can with the truck, there's a very specific ideology that surrounds the can. And this is where it kind of like, okay, this is kind of one of those cool things I take on. And Andy was right on board. That can is I call it the parachute. That's your safety net. If something bad happens while you're in there searching, you're going to use that to mitigate whatever issue so that you can get out safely or find a new way out. It is not designed as its primary role to go in, kick down doors, put out the fire, and cancel the engine. Though it's fun to say, and we've gone through this before, I believe, too, this rhetoric. Teaching how to maneuver with that can. You come to a door, you make your call, to command or the hand line and say, here, I got the fire. This is where it is. You're mapping out that structure. And while you're waiting and or continuing on with your search, if that thing does not, get water on it soon enough, you might have to control it back or gate it back. So controlling that door, making a sweep inside that room if you can, if you think it's tenable, and recognizing which conditions are tenable and which are not, get in there, sweep that room, come back out, control that door again. And then if that door starts burning down, okay, you might want to wet down that door. Or there's a failure on the hand line. Now we might have to put a little water on that fire in that room to cool the gases or cool the floor, whatever it is that you got working, depending. For our situation, it was just hit the ceiling, cool the room, shut that door, watch that steam do some work. 2.5 gallons does a lot of damage to a fire if you can control the things around it, which is the ventilation portion of it. And for them to see that and play with that over and over, they wanted to do it more than one. So there's only enough time to rotate one person in and out at a time, or a team of two. we got it all done, and they're like, can we run that again? I've never seen that before. I haven't seen that yet in this academy. Yeah, but fuck yeah, we're gonna keep going. That was cool that people were kind of clued in, because it can be a boring skill station. But I think the way that we played off each other and we kind of dialed it up a little bit more and gave them more learning opportunity while practicing, they liked it. So that was cool to see.
It's funny. I wish that Claymont, and we posted on our Instagram, and it is going around on a lot of Instagram accounts, a lot of accounts that are bigger than ours, that those guys from Claymont,
Yeah.
awesome video. And I wish that video was available for your guys' truck week to show the importance of carrying a can while performing a surge, because those guys would have never made that second floor. I mean, I shouldn't say they never. They would have not made that second floor as quick as they did without the can man carrying that can on an interior surge with them.
Yeah.
The stairs were on fire. For them to make the stairs, they had to knock down those stairs, and there wasn't a hose line in place yet for them to knock down that fire. Pulled the pin, knocked the fire down, and got to the second floor and effected a rescue out of a window, only because that can was in place and it was able to knock down that fire in a timely fashion.
Yeah, that was a beautiful catch on a camera that came out like a week after. I wish it was there in time, because it was exactly what we were trying to go for. Is this here is for your protection, not to just go in and hit every freaking spot fire. Bad television shows us that. You know, we watch all the fire TV shows and stuff. Actually, I don't. The missus does, and she's a cop, but she loves the fire shows, and every single one, they all, the truck company runs in, they got 6 fire extinguishers, they put out all the fire, and then, and then they chit chat about their drama.
Yeah.
That's not realistic. You're there to gate things down, and then as a last resort, you might have to wet it a little bit. And the question always ends up coming up, well, what if it's like kitchen cabinets? What if you go in, it's a kitchen fire and it's just the kitchen cabinets? Do we not put it out and wait for the engine?
Oh, you put it out.
Yeah, that's when you start getting the wild shot. You put that shit out. It's 100%, right? That's when you get to have a little bit of a fun, the fun time. But you got to make those, showing them and making them experience those over and over again, those different situations, is what really is going to make things stick. Not tell them, here's all your options, write them down, put it in your pocket, and recall them later. That's not gonna. You're not driving those memory cards in the Rolodex.
So let's just jump ahead to search real quick before we end this. We're going just a quick wrap up of truck week. Have they added any furniture? There was talks. I mean, relatively, that is a pretty new burn building, and it was pretty sterile for searching. And everybody, if I say sterile, everybody should just picture in their mind a big burn building with open rooms, minimal furniture, and some racks to throw some pallets on. And hey, it's really not conducive to realistic searching. And there was always talk that they're going to build out furniture. Have they completed that yet there?
I can't say for sure. In the VAS rooms where there is no fire, or they can close off from the fire, there was some furniture, but I think we had that the last couple of years.
End table.
Yeah, but not in the burn rooms themselves.
Right.
And it kind of comes down. It's tough with the burn rules and everything. You can't have fire load inside of there other than the fire source.
Right, but there's rooms that are quote unquote the searching rooms that you're supposed to be able to search in, and the VIS room was the only room that ever really had and when I say considerable, I mean it was like a love seat, maybe a couch, and an end table in there.
Yeah, then there's some
we would also store the extra bales of hay for the burn room across the hallway.
Mm-hmm.
But the other room on the second floor, I can picture it when you come off the landing, the first room to the left, that had like the frame of a futon in there. And that was about it. And I think the county facility at the PSTF, with the resources they have through the college and the county and the guys that have worked there full time, they do a very good job, and they've built out some props that at least de-sterilize the rooms. And they even have, they've even put metal propped furniture, their furniture that it's made of metal. So the firemen have to search around these props in the room to make it a little bit more realistic. I mean, even one of those rooms on the second floor at the county facility has
Bunk
there's
beds.
bunk beds. There's desks in there, like a classroom. The one the burn room where there's a kitchen table, kitchen chairs, there's cabinets and everything else. That's all part of the prop. And even in the VIS room at the county facility, there's bunk beds in there, built out bunk beds. I think there's a cradle in there now, or a crib. They're just not
and
that
dresser or something like that.
Yeah, I never liked teaching search, and hopefully they get it back. Hopefully they do a better job at that burn building. But they need to concentrate. Like they have a beautiful facility, they have a beautiful training grounds, but they fall short on using that building properly to teach search techniques, because you're going into a sterile 10 by 10 room with no furniture. So what are you searching? Where do you put the dummy? Just in the middle of the floor. There's nothing to search around. There's nothing to maneuver around.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my soapbox for that. And I know the guy that works on my company, he's lieutenant in his volley department. They just opened up a burn building this year, and I'm hopefully going to get some pictures of it. I want to see if they built out some props or not to search around there. That is the one thing that the fire service has to do a better job on, is getting props to search around. And that's why in our basement at our firehouse on the north side, we have that. I think I measured out. It's like an 860 square foot mock apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's the same layout every time. But you know what? You take that living room furniture and you move it around, it messes with people. And I wouldn't say it's full Collier's Mansion hoarder conditions right now, but it's
getting grungy
in there.
It's getting grungy, yeah.
We have the ability to smoke the basement out. We have the ability to, we also have the BA shields, or, I prefer just putting some paper towel on my mask, because then when I'm done with the paper towel, I can wipe the sweat. You black yourself out, or you smoke that basement up enough, it's pretty realistic conditions in a realistic apartment that we've built out in that basement. And I wish these places that we hold these academies, they would have the forethought to concentrate on their search techniques with building out a prop or a facility like that.
Mm-hmm.
But we're so concentrating on live fire. To me, the best live fire you're going to get is a canned confidence live fire. Other than that, what do you get out of, an engine? We stretch in, squirt about 50 gallons of water on 2 pallets and a bale of hay, then back out. There's nothing realistic about it. The way these burn buildings now are vented, the smoke doesn't bank down in them as good as they should. So you have to use theater smoke as well. So it's never really that hot. I mean, every fire I've been in, you're not walking. And in these burn buildings, and it's another training scar, you watch the instructors walk, and then the students think they can walk. And then you yell at them not for walking, and they get down on their knees. And then because the theater smoke's up here, you can't see the students, so then you're walking around with a tick. And it's just, you develop training scars for not only instructors when they go to a real job, because now they're relying on a tick to watch their students. And the students are developing training scars because they think they can walk because the instructor's walking. And it's like,
yeah.
Yeah.
So you can't play pretend. It goes back to that same thing. Yeah. You have to take something out of that environment or change that environment. The tick, the can had, we did tick in the morning right before the can. And then we actually ended up integrating that into the can confidence station, just so they could see how much damage that 2.5 does thermally as well. So that was cool. A lot of wows coming out of there. A lot of people doing the, oh wow, I didn't realize, because 2.5 gallons, that's nothing. You just use a hose line, and you took 500 gallons just to get a knock on a room. To see the thermal layering and everything. The theater smoke is kind of, it's a hit and miss thing, because when you put it in a cold building, it disperses everywhere. If you got heat, yeah, you can sort of start to get it to rise, or it ends up drifting down low depending on the temperature changes and what it's doing throughout the day.
Or it burns off.
Or it burns off, but it does come to the benefit that when you do have a vent somewhere and live fire, and you still got that theater smoke in the background, it's dragging through. So you're essentially colorizing in a degree. You're colorizing the air current coming in through that vent as well. So it travels along the floor or whatever, seeking out that fire, which is kind of cool to see that from it's not what you're really going to see in real life, but you get to put a visual aspect to that vent as well.
Yeah.
But you're not showing the real thing. And I don't know. The whole thing, it was a fun week. It was a lot of work. We came out excited. I wish we could extend that each one of these weeks, maybe another couple days. There's a lot of props I would personally build. I got some ideas in my head to bolster some of the smaller nuance of truck week or truck company tactics, such as like doing peeks about, peeking through the ceiling before you enter a doorway. There's all sorts of cool props. What happens if you poke that hole and you see some fire? Okay, you can make a prop where you can actually pull down some ceiling and then dust those joists and everything. You can stuff some hay up there, but now you got to make sure that it's copacetic with the rules.
Yeah.
But you can really get some cool stuff out of that.
It reminds me, next time when you relieve me on Monday morning, I'm going to go on my soapbox about the rules.
Okay.
And some of these other things that I know why, but at the same time, we don't have to. But for offline discussion. So yeah, truck week sounds like it went well. It's a shame that, someone quit when they're pretty much halfway through the academy. And engine week it's tough work. And then after that, it's ropes, and it's kind of a breeze after that.
Yeah, it gets into some fun stuff. And then the very last week is like the live fire. Like you put it all together, and that's right. Yeah. You already said, you see the wheels come off. That's where it really starts to fall apart, because you're pulling some information from week 1, you're pulling some from week 6, and trying to put it all together, and it gets chaotic. But nonetheless, you're out there, you're exercising, getting paid to work out or whatever it is, depending on your department.
Yep.
It can be fun. I think that's it with the update for what's happening at the academy. At the end of it, we did say that, hey, we did truck week before engine week, and sometimes we flip-flop those two things. So they do the speeches at the end from the instructors type of thing. I kept mine, believe it or not, short. Did the classic, as Justin always says, the best, and as Sean Egan had said, Captain Egan said, best place to be is on the nozzle. Truck week is all that hard work we did throughout that week was all designed to get that hand line in the optimum position, as fast and as efficient as possible, while changing things up, making calls on the fly as the situation dictates. It's a lot of work. It's grueling work, but it's definitely not where the glory is. The glory is on that line. I think most people agree with that. And then they went into engine week, and I haven't heard anything. So maybe they got beat up. Who knows? We'll find out next week.
So that's a good wrap.
Yeah,
we're gonna be recording one next week, I think.
Yeah, early next week.
We got another one coming on. Excited to see what he's got to talk about. We got to nail Andy down. Did you talk to him about it?
No, because as soon as he left there, he went to Sweden, Denmark, all those.
I saw him lifting stones and everything else he was doing over in Europe.
Yeah, he's back now, I believe.
We got some other guys that we're just trying to get our schedules lined up. We
got one at the end of May coming up for the EV, so that's what we're going to dial that one in. Yeah, it's going to be exciting month, actually.
Yeah, hopefully we get our schedules all lined up and get these guys on. So
questions, comments, concerns, you can fire that off. Either send us a direct message to the Instagram, fire from two windows, all spelled out, no numbers. Or you can email us at firefromtwowindows@gmail.com. We will respond pretty quick. Actually, it goes to both of our phones, so we see all that stuff in real time. We can, if we don't have the answer for you directly, we can find one and source that for you or connect you up with things. So please reach out. We love hearing from people. It's been this has been an exciting ride.
Yeah, it's just fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Anything else, Matt?
nope, that's it.
All right, man.
All right. Stay safe, everyone.
See you guys.